Good morning. As been said, I'm Wolsey Barnard. I'm standing for the Minister, and if you're official, it's one of the most difficult tasks to do. But just some apologies officially from the fact that originally the Minister of Energy, Mrs. Peters, was supposed to be here. She's been requested by the President to join him in South Korea with the nuclear summit. And then the Deputy Minister was then requested to stand in for her. Unfortunately, she falls sick over the weekend. She's still in bed. She doesn't even have a voice. I tried to speak to her this morning, and I think this would probably be better to just use finger language. So I'm standing in for the Minister, and I'm going to read the paper and the keynote address as would have been delivered by the Minister. So firstly, I think to start off with the fact that I'm not sure if the Honourable Minister of Energy and Power Development in Zimbabwe have arrived, but if he's here, I notice him, and then all delegates from foreign countries, especially from our African continent, executive managers, senior managers of utilities, also from our own utility, ESCOM, and regulators, energy and other energy-related institutions and organizations, senior officials of government of South Africa and other countries, and then, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good morning to you all. I think, Chairperson, if you want to start off and open a conference and exhibition of this nature for the continent Africa, it's important that we as government from South Africa also reflect what is the current challenges and issues that's related to energy. And this speech will then also deal with 5 such crucial aspects that are of importance to us right now. I think before we can start off, it's important to take note of the fact that if you want to talk about any development in a country, you can't discuss it if you don't deal with energy. And specifically, if you want to deal with sustainable development, then you have to deal with also sustainable energy. Sustainable energy needs also sustainable management of that energy. And I can define loosely what I mean by sustainable management. It contains the whole value chain of energy, from the policy developments, your implementation strategies, your overall planning, your regulatory environment, the role of your private and public sectors and the interaction between those entities, as well as the availability and affordability of energy when it's produced and distributed and made available to the various entities of your economic cycle. If this is in place, we can then talk about sustainable development. Otherwise, it won't be possible. As you might be aware, this conference takes place against the backdrop of the United Nations 2012 being declared as the International Year of Sustainable Energy Access. And the Department of Energy have therefore also earmarked this year as the same theme, but more importantly, the focus month of this whole year happened to be March. So this conference and exhibition is actually taking place within that energy month of March. And congratulations also with the organizers in managing that within this month. You will also take note that during this month there's a couple of Indaba's conferences, workshops that have taken place. Electrification Indaba in Durban a couple of days ago. Before that, the Wind Atlas launch in Cape Town and in Johannesburg. And in 2 days' time, the Energy Planning Colloquium that's going to take place here in Gallagher Estate. All part of this whole initiative to focus on energy access. I think it's important in this keynote address, as mentioned, that to address the 5 aspects that we currently are focusing on. Not to say there aren't any other energy aspects that the department and the ministries are dealing with currently, but just for this purpose, 5. And the reason for it is a couple of these aspects are also going to be discussed in the various seminars that are going to be handled and managed through the next 2 days. I think it's important that for as South Africans, we cannot overemphasize the need to change and address the challenges and suffering of rural women and youth from unemployment as well as energy poverty. So our whole focus is one area of focus is around that. Hence our policies are not meant to only provide relief to industrial and commercial sectors that propel our economy and our economical growth, but they must also address the social inequalities that are relevant to our circumstances in this country as a developing country. This request that we continue to interact with communities, industrial role players, labour, is very important, and hence the interaction also at this level within this conference is a platform for us to also engage with various stakeholders on these issues. Chairperson, with that being said, I want then to move into the different aspects that we want to highlight as part of this opening address. Firstly, the first item under discussion I want to share with you is the issue about the new generation capacity and the process around that with respect to South Africa. As you've been made aware, and if you from South Africa, you will know that in May last year, 2011, the government has announced officially the Integrated Resource Plan, shortly being called Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, which actually spells out the next 20 years of energy production in the country. I think what's important is that in this new generation that's been earmarked for the country, the following have been earmarked for these different technologies. 9.6 gigawatts to nuclear power, 6.3 gigawatts to coal, 11.4 gigawatts to renewable energy, and 11 gigawatts to various other generations, including hydro imports, small hydro, and other renewable energy components. The IRP is to be reviewed this year already. It's a live document. It's not a static cast in stone directional document, and hence you need to address the different and changes that's taking place from time to time around you to address the various needs of the future. But for now, that is the direction. Chairperson, implementation of the RP is well underway, and evidence of this was the announcement of renewable energy IPP bidding program that was launched last year in August. 3,625 megawatts of capacity was set aside for renewables for this period as interim. 5 window periods have been made available, and this first window of opportunity resulted in over 100 billion rands of investment that have come and been invested into these projects. Of these first window of opportunity that closed in August last year, and that have been announced during the COP17 conference in Durban, 28 bidders have been identified as successful bidders out of 53, and of those bidders that have been identified, 630 megawatts have been allocated for solar PV, 150 megawatts for concentrated solar power, and 635 megawatts for wind, onshore wind generation. There's still 2,300 plus minus megawatt available for the other windows of opportunities. The second window have closed the 5th of March this year, and we are now set to move into a fresh bidding round, which will focus specifically on biomass, biogas, landfill gas, concentrated solar, small hydro, and cogeneration. I think it's important to know that the renewable energy program is a rolling program where as I mentioned, different windows will be announced from time to time. But for this round, I said 2,300 megawatts are available for the bidding process. I think it's also important to know that in this whole rollout, it's also important that it's not only the renewable energy generation part, but also the whole value chain that need to be addressed. And hence why also the local content of the technologies that will be used has been set at a target of 60% in the various, and it differs from various technologies, and some have been set to 60%. I think it's also important that this round that have been closed the 5th of March, we received 79 bids in comparison to the 53 of the previous window of opportunity. Which is also important is that we could see the average bid prices, tariffs are showing a decrease tendency, and that's exactly what government had intended with this whole bidding process. Over and above with this renewable energy IPP program, we also have issued a request for information for projects that are available from other technologies such as coal, gas, imported hydro, cogeneration, just to mention some of the technologies. Once we have received the information from the prospective project bidders, we will initiate a procurement process to meet the IRP requirements based on these projects, and this will also be made announced in the news media. The IRP provides for upscaling nuclear capacity to 9.6 gigawatts, has been set, in order to boost the national baseload for electricity supplies in the future time to come. Concerns regarding the safety of nuclear energy in light of the recent Fukushima incident will be factored into the South African approach to ensure that proper safeguards and safety measures are put in place and that they are overseen by the appropriate experts, authorities and entities. In November 2011, the Cabinet approved the establishment of a National Nuclear Energy Executive Coordinating Committee, abbreviated as NNECC, to oversee the rollout at the highest level in the country with respect to the nuclear build program. And the Department of Energy is currently leading the interdepartmental team on a technical level to finalize the implementation plan. The NEEC is headed by the Deputy President as the authority for decision-making, monitoring, and assuring general overseeing of the nuclear energy expansion program. Chairperson, the second aspect that I want to address is the whole issue about this changing supply side of the electricity supply industry. Need also us to think carefully about the rest of the industry and the structuring of the market itself. And the second aspect, Chairperson, I think is also the announcement and the process of the establishment of an independent systems and market operator, shortly been called ISMO. And the ISMO has been formalized through the ISMO bill that sets out to improve the operational efficiency in the electricity supply industry by putting in place a regulatory and institutional mechanism that unbundles the generation, transmission and training functions within Eskom. The ISMO bill is in the parliamentary process and public hearings are due to commence in May 2012. And all of you are welcome to comment and participate in that process. The electricity in order, that's one aspect, is to also look at the structure, but also what we have to look at is the whole regulatory environment around the changing ESI of this country. Hence, the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill seeks to provide for an improved regulatory framework given the massive capital expansion program on the supply side of this sector. It also improves the production for the expansion of energy services, but also very specifically some aspects that we currently are finding as a shortcoming in the current regulatory bill is on the obtaining of servitudes and the clarity around that is also being addressed in this, just as one aspect around this amendment bill. I think it's also important to just talk about a regional integration between our country and SADC and rest of Africa. Just to mention two, the Grand Inga hydro scheme, MOU have been signed between Grand Inga with the Democratic Republic of Congo and ourselves, the South African government, in order to create a partnership aimed at developing strategically this resource that is also assisting on a low-carbon economy and interconnection between the various energy grids in the region. Located on the Congo River, the Grand Inga project is expected to generate approximately 40,000 megawatts of hydropower that can be made available within the regional distribution network. I think for us in the country, it's also important, is one aspect to talk about generation upstream market, but what about the customers on the other end of the equation? Importantly, as you know, been aware of that, and that's a third aspect, Chairperson, that we want to share with you, is on the universal access of sustainable energy to our customers. And specifically to those households that haven't been the privilege to be exposed to modern energy means like electricity. The government has established 10 years ago an entity called INAP, Integrated National Electrification Program, which is a backbone of the electrification program of government. And then this unit, INAP, is serving the industry in terms of allowing funds from a fiscus to make grid and non-grid connections. This is done through either Eskom or municipalities, or in a non-grid case through concessionaires, in terms of addressing our electrification backlog in this country. I think it's important also to celebrate some of the successes of this program. To date, 82% of all formal households have been electrified. That represents just over 76% of all households to have access to electricity. What a difference between formal and informal is that we regard the formal as the ones that we count, the informal are still there, and they also need to be electrified. So it's important also to then, in the overall figure, to also reflect what are the backlog. This is significant achievements that have been achieved in terms of the electrification program. And just to give you an indication, in the last couple of years, spanning over 18 years, 5.4 million households have been electrified through grid, and over 50,000 households have been received access of non-grid solar home systems. 12,000 schools have been grid connected, over 3,000 schools via non-grid technologies, 350,000 clinics by grid, and around 350 by non-grid technologies. Despite all of the success that's just been referred to, the electrification program is facing a number of serious challenges. These challenges can be grouped basically in three categories, such as the increased electrification targets. Although over 5.4 million households have been electrified, we're still sitting with a backlog around about 3.4 million, of which 2.2 is in the formal side and 2.12 on an informal side. And that need to be addressed through the current limited funding. And then the second challenge is then also the escalating cost in addressing electrification. And then thirdly, the delivery capacity from various sectors within the electrification program. In addition to this electrification program, government also embarked on a 1 million target solar water heater program, of which 220,000 have already been installed. And it's foreseen that by the year 2014-15, the target of 1 million will be reached. I think the third aspect fourth aspect, that need to be addressed also is that it's one thing to celebrate some new connections, but we also have to address the shortcomings on our distribution side of the industry. And one of the biggest criticisms of the IRP process was also that it only addressed the generation part. And I'm just going to focus for a moment on some of the challenges on the distribution side, and specifically some of those that we have identified on the municipality side. The first one is energy efficiency. As you know, the country is going through a difficult supply-demand side balance while waiting for the current built power stations to come in line, to come in line, as well as those new projects that have been alluded to just now. So in that process, we have also engaged the whole industry under the leadership of Eskom in this regard on energy efficiency campaign and processes. I think it's important that we also acknowledge this tremendous good work that has been done by Eskom, and also I think we also have to acknowledge our large energy users. They've always been accused of various things around energy, but they have come to the party in this regard, and we want to thank them for that, and also what they're going to do in the future. Energy efficiency on the local government side is currently quite a challenge, with the fact that it's on the one hand, local governments are making revenue out of the sale of electricity, and now on top of that, they've been instructed to cut back on the consumption of electricity. So that causes quite a concern for the municipalities of not getting so actively involved in energy efficiency. This contradiction between a successful energy efficiency campaign and reducing municipal revenues needs to be addressed through a revenue decoupling process, in terms of which municipalities need to be rewarded to the extent of the revenue loss that they will might be engaged with when implementing energy efficiency processes and programs. Without this instrument being offered to municipalities, they will be inclined to resist energy efficiency and not implementing the innovation and the advantage energy efficiency processes will have to the country. From our perspective, energy efficiency technologies have a sustainable job creation potential. Consequently, financial losses to municipalities must be counterbalanced by not only decoupling the revenue drop due to energy efficiency programs, but also by demonstrating the jobs overcomes the energy efficiency program. I think the next aspect around municipalities is also the aspect of power generation. Some municipalities, particularly metros, have old power generation stations that are currently in various stages of readiness to generate electricity. Municipalities that have old power stations need to be encouraged to get them functional again, because they present an opportunity for municipalities to increase revenue at the same time to improve the country's electricity system revenue margin. The medium-term risk mitigation plan that was built into the integrated resource plan has made provision for municipal generation, and some negotiations have to be concluded regarding the offtake contracts that will make the investment attractive for municipalities. So also make an appeal to municipalities to get involved in generation again. Then the third one under municipalities is the whole issue about EDR restructuring. As you know, that the whole restructuring process through the so-called REITs formation have been stopped just over a year ago, and although that process has stopped, it doesn't mean that the overall challenges within the distribution side of the industry has vanished. Actually, as a matter of fact, it has increased. The previous EDR Holdings entity that was developed and established to overlook this restructuring that was disbanded in the meantime, have towards the end of 2008, 2009, did an analysis of the industry, and it was found that at that stage, over 27 billion rands were required to refurbish and upgrade the distribution network in the country. That have unfortunately grown substantially the last couple of years to where we expect that it's currently in the vicinity of 34 billion rands backlogs that we're talking about. And in order to address the holistic electricity industry, it helps nothing that we invest billions and trillions of rand on the supply side and not addressing the distribution side. Our approach is focused on the prioritization of regulatory matters rather than structural adjustment at the distribution business. We are convinced that 90% of the problems at municipal distribution level are regulatory of nature. The challenges related to poor investment in infrastructure, poor revenue collection, poor quality of electricity supply, and ultimately poor service delivery can be addressed through regulatory interventions like licensing and enforcing of norms and standards by the regulator. The so-called approach to distribution asset management, shortly called ADAM program, is an initiative by government to assist municipalities in addressing these issues. The ADAM process is based on 3 legs. The one is financial assistance, the one is skills development, and the third one is project management assistance. Because it's one thing to receive an amount of money, but the distribution and management of that is also crucial. As part of this rehabilitation process, the EDI will have to undergo not only a structural change in terms of hardware, but we also foresee that in the whole process of ADAM, that we also envisage that the smart electricity technologies beyond only smart meters will be implemented on an experimental basis. As part of ADAM, it is hoped that EDI can undergo a quantum jump, not only with respect to rehabilitation, upgrading of networks and infrastructure, but also in the process venturing into smart electricity grids and technologies. It is also seen as one of the focus areas of this conference, and we are excited to see that. The last item to be discussed is very crucial and I think also important, is the whole issue about electricity tariffs. The lack of finance for infrastructure projects in Africa has in some cases directly been linked to poor regulatory environment, and in most countries this then also related to poor infrastructure investment. We are very keen to position South Africa as a preferred investment destination by promoting a clear regulatory framework for the power sector. And crucial aspect of this regulatory environment is then to also the tariff setting. One of the biggest uncertainties is around future electricity tariffs is then also need to be linked to the socio-economic outlook of the country. The next round of multi-year price determination, or shortly being called MYPD, this round is MYPD 3, is due to start in a couple of months' time, literally in 1 month's time. In the previous round, MYPD 2, as you know, NERSA has then also announced an average 25% increase of electricity. And just recently, the 25.9% increase for this 2012-2013 cycle have been decreased to 16%. Now, there's very speculations in the media around this, and this was duly made available or being made or the result of the rephased equity returns to government as a shareholder of Eskom. Eskom is likely to apply another sizable tariff increase to NERSA in the MYPD 3 cycle due to the building programs plus the findings and financial commitments that the integrated resource plan is also put on Eskom infrastructure. Currently, NERSA is applying the so-called rate of return methodology for the tariff increase. And it was felt that government need to also instigate, and an interdepartmental team has been constituted, considering then also this whole application from Eskom. And I think it's important that the involvement of this team is then to also look at the models that to balance the very social economic impact of increasing electricity prices, as well as the country's competitiveness, Eskom financial viability, and the necessary policy considerations implementing the integrated resource plan. And all of that need to be balanced, and hence why this interdepartmental team to look at some direction on the tariffs. And that has also been alluded to and highlighted by the President in its State of the Nation address delivered recently in Parliament. Chairperson, I want to end off on a lighter note, and also to welcome, as I said in the beginning, all of the delegates at this conference and exhibition. And I also want to specifically welcome our foreign visitors and those out of town of Gauteng. Please use the opportunity and also to enjoy the local hospitality. invest in our economy by purchasing products here in Sandton and Gauteng, which is actually the mecca of shopping in Africa. I wish you good luck with the next 2 days of deliberation, and looking forward to see the birth of new ways being developed for energy generation and the usage of energy in this country as a result of this conference and the technologies that's been exhibited. I thank you. God bless.